Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Business Unscripted podcast. I'm Dave Worden, and I'm here with my business partner, Duarne. Duarne, how you doing, buddy?
G'day, guys.
Well.
Hi, Dave.
Love it.
I am good.
So we're here today. Today, this podcast, we wanted to have a place and a space for you guys where we're just going to have some real conversations, me and Duarne. If you have questions, make sure you drop them down below. Any of the topics we're talking about. So we're going to be covering things like leads, sales, money, efficiency. One of the topics we're going to be talking about today, just different things that we've experienced in our business that we want to share with you. If you're just starting out, if you're experienced and you can learn from stuff that we've gone through, things that we've helped people implement in their businesses so that you can do it in yours. So with that, go grab your cup of Joe, kick back. Let's jump into the show.
Love it.
Duarne, buddy. How is your week? I know last week you were a little under the weather. So first things first, hope you're feeling better.
Made much better this week. Little lacking of the voice last week. A bit of a throat infection crept in and decided to hang around for a week. So that was certainly an unwelcome visitor. But
I'm going to say I don't think I've ever lost my voice, like literally.
Really?
I'm sure some people wished would happen. like, man, you talk way too much, bro. Like, can you lose it for a little bit? But no, actually, I haven't. Luckily, I've been that lucky. So I could imagine you, in all people who couldn't talk. How did you get over that?
Well. There was moments where I'd have my phone and I'd be typing in what I thought was amusing and messages to people and holding my phone up, chuckling to myself while they read it and shook their head. Lots of email, lots of instant messaging. And yeah, look, I'd save up not talking all day if I had an important meeting or an important conversation I had to have later that day. But as my wife kept telling me, stop talking, save your voice.
It's a very hard thing for you.
It is. Communication's a big thing for me. And when you think about communication, you typically think about verbal communication, right? Orally delivering your message. And you realize just how stressful it can be when you don't have a voice to be able to share that. It changes everything.
I can imagine.
My visitor in the background there.
Yeah, your little bro. But hey, buddy, welcome to the show. No,
I love it. Impromptu, this is unscripted, guys.
Unscripted. So, one of the things we were talking pre-show, and I think a lot of business owners I've had conversations with, and Warren, I'm sure you as well, because we help people with these kind of problem solving situations. Is I wanted to kind of maybe talk through a little bit a couple of things, like what strategies have you done in your business and me in my business that have helped us be more efficient, right? A lot of conversations, people say, well, I don't have enough time for that, or I don't know where I'm going to be able to do that, and it just comes down because they have so much on their plate. And there's only so many hours in a day, right? We're all given the same 24-hour period. And it's about how we use it and how we maybe delegate or put some systems in place to make it more efficient. So for yourself, what's the biggest thing that you feel like has helped you become more efficient with your operations, with your business?
Good. It's a great question. I had a situation just this week. We're putting together a bunch of video content for a project we're working on. And the first video that came through, I got the team to build these in Canva because that's my preference for, doing editing on, simple videos. And I jumped in and did some quick tweaks. And it was a 30-second video, so nothing crazy. Did about 2-3 minutes worth of tweaks and then sent it back to them and told them what I did. And said, great, move on to the next one. And they've got about 15 videos lined up after that. And the second video comes through, and I know the next day, and I noticed it had similar concerns to the first one. And I was about to jump in and do it. I thought, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to record a quick audio message, send it to the team because I had my voice back then. That helped. And hey guys, I want you to go and check this at this point, check this at this point, and note that you can't have this happening. So go and clean that up. Send it back. Sure enough, bang, the result came back, and I got what I wanted. Third video comes out, a couple of different tweaks, and now I've got the team on track. They're producing the fourth and the fifth video, and there's very, very little problems with them. But if I was to sit there and do what my first instinct was, and that was just to jump in and fix them myself because I'm capable of doing that, they're just going to keep doing the same mistake. They're going to keep making those same little errors. They're going to keep adding more work to me. So it's a very inefficient technique to do that, where sometimes, even though I know I could do it quicker than quickly, like a couple of minutes to get the job done, quicker than I could probably portray the information back to them to get them to fix it, I've got to look at systems and processes and long-term plays here. And the long-term play is, I don't want to be doing all of that video editing on, in the end, it's probably going to be 120 videos. And I don't want to be doing that. So it's better to spend the time now, get that course correction in place, and, then just sit back and watch those quality results coming back out the way I expect them to in the future. And then just look out for other quirks and concerns that I might have and share that feedback. And I think, look, that's just one example, but for me, it's about sometimes just not jumping back on the tools yourself just because it's quicker to fix something. Spend the time training someone else to do it, so the next time they have to do it, they can do it better and to the standard you want it.
So I guess what I'm hearing, right, is your strategy, or your number one, has been that power of delegation, the power
Absolutely.
of having
upskilling.
A team around.
Yeah, absolutely. Having the team and upskilling and making sure that they're capable of doing more, giving them the responsibility to do more,
Right.
and trying different things and communicating back. Like, we tried a different technique on developing some website pages recently. Typically, we'll send the client out the request to say, hey, get us back the content. And we will give you the layout first so you know what content to fill. Well, I thought, let's try something. It was a personal project that I was working on. So I wrote all the content and then sent it to the team and said, design the page to work with the content.
Right.
And it seems a little simple, but that one little process proved to me that I got a better result first time round. And when I went back to my team and asked the question, how did you find that process? I was surprised. It was like, oh, sir, it's amazing. It's great. It's so much easier to create content this way. They're getting designs back to me so much quicker because they basically know what the look and feel's got to be based on the content. And I was like, wow, that's as simple a thing as that changed, probably about 20-30% delivery times.
Right. How did you get over, or maybe you didn't struggle with this, but I know a lot of people often struggle. I think I struggle with this a little bit as well. Delegation. That I feel is a big thing, especially if you're a business owner who is just getting started. Maybe you're hiring your first VA. Maybe you're up to that point where you're maybe outsourcing some tasks, or you're bringing in a new employee. How did you get over the delegation sort of obstacle? Like you just said, right? You gave an example of delegation and how instead of going in and fixing it yourself, you kind of taught them to do it. But how did you get to that point? Because I'm sure you didn't start that way. I'm sure previously it was you, kind of doing everything yourself and then wondering, like, why do I have this employee, right? How did you get over that?
100%. Look, for me, it's going to sound a little maybe simplistic, but stop delegating tasks out that have really tight timelines. Start planning yourself. Prior planning and preparation prevents poor performance, right? And one of the things I learned was this, is if I've got a project coming up, give as much notice to the person or the team I'm delegating to. Because what that allows them to do is you can prepare them better to succeed in what you're asking them to do. One of the biggest things I see is if there's a problem comes up, and this is a big problem when you delegate, they're not going to be perfect. I just talked about that. Expect that. Expect the unexpected. And
you definitely have to realize that when you're delegating it to somebody else, it is not going to be done exactly the way that you have envisioned, right? Unless you train them appropriately, right? Exactly. They're not you. They're not. And that I feel like was one of my struggles, right? Where when I was going through it, we just had, I had my first VA, right?
Yeah.
And it was always, I know what I wanted. I know what I want this to look like. I know this. And where I think I might, one, I don't think I explained it well because, understanding kind of that difference in, experience or mindset, right? A VA doesn't have the same drive, the same, forward thinking, mind that you and I do most of the time. So what you have to do is you kind of have to dumb it down. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to realize that, it's not going to be perfect. It might have to go back and forth for you to train them. And that's okay. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you have to give yourself that freedom to say it's okay. Or that, you have to give yourself, like, you brought that person on for a reason. You interviewed them, right? You outsourced to them. So you had a conversation with them. So you trust them. So if you're going to be investing your money, whether it's into a VA, whether it's into an employee, or whether it's you're outsourcing, like, you have to trust that that money's being well spent. Step back, let them do what they need to do, and then evaluate, I think, is the best thing that you can do. For myself, it was the best thing that I've done, where I'd be able to step back and evaluate and still have some kind of those, like, KPIs, those sort of report outs that you hold yourself and your employee or your VA, accountable to.
Oh, look, absolutely. And look, you know what, to get the best results, incorporate, like what I was saying there, is give them plenty of time to do that sort of thing. Like, if you need a one-page piece of collateral created, for example, and you have a tight timeline, would you go and say, hey, I need this piece of collateral created. I need it in 6 hours from now. I need you. I'm going to be sending it out tonight. I need you to get it back to me. Go write the content. Here's the page where all the information is. This is my main message. Make it look amazing. Stick to my brand colors. Or if you knew there was a bit of a time crunch, would you say to the person and get a better result potentially by going in, I'll write the content and I'll provide you the written content. I want you to go and design it, make it look great. And in about 3 hours, send me a copy of the draft so I can review it, just in case you're going in a direction I don't agree with, and we can get you back on track. Then you can do course correction and get it back out. The biggest concern I think we have when we do delegation too is, and this is something I learned over time, is break it into smaller chunks. Stop delegating like a massive task. Like, you wouldn't go and delegate, I want you to build me a website, and then give them very little information about it. You have to disseminate that.
How you want it to look, how you want anything. Yeah, it's so.
So I use the 1 minute manager principle for that. Anything that you can't explain in under 1 minute needs to be broken into multiple tasks. And when you delegate that, ask people to explain back to you what they feel that the instruction is, so that you clearly understand if that instruction was, received correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that for my, and maybe there's some people out there that are going through the same thing. So in my personal experience, when my first big team that I was in front of and leading, about 10 people. So ultimately, I know I see things quickly in my head of how I want the outcome to be, or report to look like, or information. And so the first few times that we were having meetings, the reports weren't coming back right. The information wasn't there, but nobody was asking any questions, right? When we were having our planning meeting. So nobody was saying, like, I'm not sure about this, or what, why, what do you want this to look like in terms of, like, the financial statements or whatever. And so what I had to realize was it was me, right? I was talking too quickly. And well, as when you're in that position of leadership or manager, a lot of times people, and no matter how open you say you are, people are still less likely to ask questions because they don't want to look like dumb or they don't want to look stupid, right? They want to know that they're comfortable in their job. So what you have to do as a leader or as a business owner is you actually have to make it okay for them. And that's what I had to do. So I told them, I said, look, I know that my flaw as a leader is that I see things very quickly in my head. And sometimes, more often than not, that doesn't make it out my mouth. And I know that. I said, but what I want is if you feel at any time when we're having this planning meetings or, maybe right after, if you feel uncomfortable or not sure of what I'm looking for, I want you to ask the question and I want you to stop me and I want you to say, hey, slow down for a minute. I want to make sure I understand this. Because if we don't, and I leave, right, and I go let's say the report's due at the end of the week and they bring me the report at the end of the week and it's not anywhere close to what I had in my head and they didn't ask a question, now it's not on me, it's on them. And I think that's the biggest thing to do is to really make a culture where it's okay to ask questions and don't talk down to people, be open to them and give them the time, right? They're not you, they're not us, they're not in our head. So we have to make sure that they have a full understanding. And I do agree with what you also said, and that's about giving the time limit. Because what will happen is if you just say, hey, I need to go do this, I need you to do this, let me know when you're done. It may take an hour, it may take 8 hours, right? And I had that example with my first, VA. It was, I asked for a simple 1-page flyer. Come to find out, it took them a whole day to create a flyer. Because they were trying to do this whole drastic, in-depth, all these different movable parts. And I'm like, bro, it's just a simple flyer. But I failed at that, right? That was my issue of I didn't break it down.
That's interesting. I remember we spoke about that at the time. And, and simple things like we make assumptions. And this is something which I think is huge for when you're delegating. You have to stop assuming people know what's going on in your own head or that people know what you want. You have to be super duper clear with people. So in that instance you were just talking about, you could come back and say, look, we've already got a brand guide that we've used before to create another handout. Go use the same one, just use the new content I'm providing you. And look, I get that back to me in a couple of hours. Because what you've
examples, just done, like you said, if you find other people that have given that maybe you've received the flyer from somebody, you're like, man, this is really good. I wish I had something.
Share that to them and say, this is great.
Exactly. Hey,
but if you combine that sort of technique along with I need it by this time, what tends to happen is people in their mind instantly start to think, okay, I need to have this done by this time. I probably can spend 30 minutes on research, an hour on actually execution, and then 30 minutes on cleaning it up. So they'll start preparing and they'll do it that way. And if they get close to the timeline, they can let you know preemptively saying, hey, look, I don't think I'm going to meet the timeline, but hey, look, here's what I've got done so far. What do you think? And if it's on track, you're probably going to give them a little extra leeway to get it finished. If it's way off track, at least you can course correct still. But I mean, that's all about communication and that's all about just keeping those lines open. And, I'm not a huge, I keep hearing this open door policy, sort of thing in businesses. And I think that's overused myself. I think what you're better off doing is rather than just insist as an open door policy, create an open forum where people can raise questions and ask questions, but also create a workforce that's willing to communicate with each other and help each other, because there might be other people in the team that can help them rather than just you helping them if you've got more than one person in the team. So, and also encourage them to, share where information is so they can go and get it. Ask, or just, if you're not even sure about this and you're going to give a task to somebody and you're really not sure what to do, go to ChatGPT and say, I'm about to give this task to somebody. What are some questions I should make sure that I cover off and answer in preparation for giving them this task? And that might just prompt you in the right direction. But I see this all the time with delegation, not giving time limits, delegating tasks that are missing instructions. And if you're right, a lot of people, they don't feel comfortable coming and telling you that they're missing instructions. Or they'll just assume that there's missing instructions and it was part of the challenge or the task that you gave them. Because some people just assume that. I'm a little bit like you in the sense that I give a task and I'll be on step 6, they're on step 3, and they're kind of figuring out how did he get from 3 to 6. And I find myself having to like go back and explain those in between parts. And I've had to do that a couple of times this week with some projects that I've been working on with one of my team members. And I was looking at him and I said, I'm pretty sure I covered this off, but it's okay. Let me take it from this angle, because I can see you're over there trying to get this job done, and I'm over here thinking that I've explained everything really well, but there's a gap in the middle. So let me figure out how to fill that gap to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all pushing in the right direction. And that, that's, you've got a choice. You either do that sort of move, or you sit back and get pissed off that somebody's not keeping up with you. And if you get pissed off, guess what? You're not going to get any further, and delegating's never going to be much fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not going to help the situation, right? If you get upset and you're not kind of now, if it's somebody that you've had the conversations with before and you've documented the conversations you've had before with them, then obviously that becomes more of a coaching moment, right, for them, where you're going to either it's coach them up or coach them out, right? You want to coach them up, and if they're not willing to be coached up and being taught, then eventually they're going to be coached out because they're not willing to improve. They're not making the efforts and the strides needed to make an impact on your business. And that's the thing that I think you have to realize and I might have said this before, right? You don't hire people to come to you to have them ask you how to do their job.
No,
you're paying
hiring a
for
skill
that.
set. You're
exactly.
hiring a skill set. And
so
I think
as long as they understand those responsibilities, they understand what the tasks are. Obviously, there's a training period, but after that, like it should be like you're like go like do this job. And if I have things that I need you to improve on, report out to them. But they should not always be coming to you. Okay, what's next, or what's this, or what's that? Like they should know it, and that's why you're paying them.
Yeah, and look, one of the things I definitely try and instill in my team is when you've finished doing what your task is, go to your team leader or your direct line manager and talk to them and let them know that you finished what you're working on, and ask them if they got another task for you to take on. But I also encourage my line managers to have like a go-to task where it's either a training modules, which it can be sitting there, a community project that we're working on, whatever that may be. But again, it's all about just getting that communication clear within the team, to make sure that they're all working together and going in that same direction. Because constantly we find ourselves, some people are just, they push in the wrong direction because they think that's where the direction should go. And they didn't ask the question. But in the same sense, you should be encouraging your team. Like you said, like you don't want them coming to you asking you what to do all the time. I try to encourage my team, if there's a problem, don't come to me with the problem alone. Try and come to me with a solution for the problem, and then ask me what my opinion on that solution is. And then I'll add to it or give you an alternative solution. But at least it shows me you've given it some thought and you give us stuff, right? I mean, you actually care about trying to solve the problem. The amount of times that, in the past where you'd get someone come up and say, hey, look, this happened. It's like, okay, what are we going to do about it? Thought we could talk about it, try and figure out how to fix it. I mean, that's cool. So what have you thought about before you got here? It's just happened. Haven't really thought about it. Okay, well, how about you go and think about it first, come back with some solutions, and schedule that a little bit out so you can actually give them a chance to come up with an idea. Encourage them, empower them to come up with some solutions. And look, they may surprise you.
Right.
But delegation and stuff is definitely, like, to get back to your original question though, Dave, one of the things I've done to help me with improving systems and automating processes and the like. I mean, there's also other things like,
Well, so like delegate. So like, not only like, are we talking delegation, but we're talking outsourcing. We're talking, any sort of way. Now, granted, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
A lot of people may also be bootstrapping. Maybe they don't have the resources to, hire or they don't have the
Mhm.
resources to do a VA yet, but you're still doing it all yourself, right? Here's the number one thing that you can do is look for ways and do a time study. And I tell everybody to do a time study, but and I don't just say it just to like speak words out of my mouth, right? I say it because it's important. Because as a business owner, you have to realize that you're not a normal schedule anymore. You're not a 9 to 5 anymore. You have to understand where are your time sucks in your business and your life as a business owner. So doing a time study for a week from sun up to sundown and when you go to bed, that's going to tell you exactly where your time is going. And you'll then be able to analyze that time study to determine what areas of your life are maybe spending too much on. And you can find ways to either get rid of it, right? Because it's not helping you generate a client or helping you service a client, or find a platform or an automation tool that can help you do that. And I just had a conversation with a client where they're not a computer person, right? They're not, into marketing flyers and understanding like automations and any of that. And in their own words, right, it takes them 4 times longer than anybody else to do anything on the computer, yet they're still trying to find time to do things on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where my advice to them is do the time study, but then also determine like what else could you be doing in that time that could potentially generate you what you want. So if you're missing out on revenue and a new client can be worth $50 an hour and you're spending 4 hours that you don't need to do, right? That's $200 that you're essentially putting out the door, when an automation tool could be, what, $50 to maybe possibly, depending on the tool. But you have to do that cost benefit analysis. And I think that's the first step for a lot of people is if you are bootstrapping and it is you just yourself, or if you have a team of 10, do a time study, because you're going to understand what areas of your week have to either get outsourced, delegated, more efficient, etc. And then you find the ways from there, right, to implement. And I think for us, we've talked about it all the time. I think a big time saver for you and I is the use of automation in terms of AI, in terms of CRM systems, etc. Because it has made a lot of you're not manually sending emails anymore, right?
Mm.
I've implemented Fixer into my emails, and it saves so much time in replies, right? A lot of the emails that I would typically have to spend and take the email and determine if I want to write something or if I need to be a little bit more detailed, and I go to ChatGPT and say, hey, write a follow-up email with this topic, in this kind of tone, and it sends me the email. Now it does it automatically. And I don't have to think about it. It saves me. I would say it probably saves me 3 or 4 hours a week.
So let's look at this too. A lot of people, when you talk to them and you ask them like, what is your time sucks? A big thing I've heard is, but I like doing that task. Like someone says, like it takes me 3 or 4 times longer to do something on the computer. She's like, then stop doing it, outsource it. Yeah, but I like it.
But those are the same people that say, but I don't have enough time to do outreach, or I don't have enough time to have client conversations.
So this is where you have to have that realization, the coming to Jesus moment, right? Where you're like, you know what? I'm sorry, but you may love it, but what if you just did one of those things a month and outsourced the rest?
Right.
And just get better at doing that, or hire a consultant to show you how to do that better so you can do it and enjoy it yourself.
Here's the thing that I think it also comes down to is I feel like, based on my conversations, it is a safety net when somebody says that, right? I'm comfortable doing that. It's because the things that require them to actually generate new leads and have sales conversations is uncomfortable because they're not used to it. And so by saying something like, well, I just like spending time, generating my own flyers or my own social media posts or going out and posting on social media. Like I enjoy doing that, not realizing that like it's taking up 5 to 6 hours a week, which when you think about it is more than 10% of your time. And those 5 to 6 hours can lead to X amount of, sales conversations. I would rather you, instead of spending time, going out and posting some really cool content, which again, you're at the mercy of the algorithm. I would rather you go and reach out to 20 people in those 5 to 6 hours. Direct outreach to your target clients, like find people in your network and actually send them a message. I would much rather you do that because it's directly leading towards a client conversation or in an exploratory call.
Yeah.
Determine in your day if you feel like you're struggling in terms of productivity or where your time is going. You should prioritize all of your tasks 1 and 2 on finding a new client, servicing your current clients. Those should be the number 1 and 2 priorities of any task that you want to look at and do today. So if it has nothing to do,
what is the result of doing that? You earn more money. You earn money. You get more clients. You earn money. You do the work for clients you have. You earn money. Why are we in business? Most importantly, is to earn money, because the more money we get into the business means we can make more decisions on hiring decisions. We can bring in more people to delegate to. We can get some freedom in our time. We can get that sort of work-life balance that we're all trying to aim towards. And this is really interesting because it kind of takes me on a little tangent related to what we're talking about. But when you sit here and we talk about, like you're talking about Fixer as a tool that you're using right now,
right?
Don't forget your team, because you don't realize the struggles that your team may be going through. So one of the things that I found fairly recently is that one of my team members is using ChatGPT, and we've done some internal training, but he was not producing out the quality of the work that I was expecting. And when I chased it with him, he's like, oh, I'm trying to. And he was arguing with ChatGPT a lot. So when I sat there and he said, oh, can you help me out with this? Like, I really don't know how to write the prompt. Can you show me how you write the prompt for this? Or can you give me the prompt on what you use to get these results? And I'm like, well, I sat back and I thought about it. I'm like, well, I make a prompt every time I want one, just on the fly, because that's just how I roll. But then I sat back and I thought, you know what? Let's make him a custom prompt, and let's make him a custom GPT for that prompt, so he has his own app, which put me on a little roll. I ended up knocking out 6 custom apps for different team members in my team, and then started sharing it to them. And then I asked them to come back and let me know what they thought.
Right.
The initial conversations that were happening after they tested it was, oh my gosh, this is great. This is saving me time. This is getting the results I wanted straight away. And when I was looking at the results, I was getting what I was expecting too. So did it take me extra time? Yes. But did it save me time in the long run? Yes. Did it save them more time in the long run? Yes. Did they become more efficient? Yes. Who wins? Everybody.
And this is where, like, any good savings or any good system is going to come with upfront time investment, right?
Or money,
so
if it's software.
Well, both, because it's time and money. So like, you're going to have to invest into the system for a little while, learn it, understand it, train yourself, train the team on it. I've led 2 big accounting system implementations at the organizations that I work with. And yes, there's a lot of time before you start seeing the savings, sometimes 6-12 months. But if you do it right, in terms of, like, you include all the stakeholders, right? You have all the conversations and you plan it correctly, and you train, in the end, everybody is more efficient and everybody's going to save a lot more time. And that's where, if at any time you're considering a change, always ask yourself the question, how many hours do you feel like it's going to save, right, in the long run? And then what's the short-term investment? And as long as those time-saving hours are worth more in the long run than the short-term time investment and upfront investment, maybe you want to do it. But it's got to be impactful. If it's a 1 or 2% increase, you probably want to focus somewhere else. But if you're looking at something that's going to increase, like, or your time savings or increase your productivity by 10, 15, 20%, now it's going to be worth, taking all that time. Because, every time you go to make you're going to see a downward turn in productivity, right?
Yeah.
So if you can afford that downward 10-20% reduction in productivity and have the upside being, a positive 20% of where you were, then it's worth it, right? You can short term, take that hit. But if you can't take that hit short term because it's only going to be an extra 5%, is it worth dropping 20% to get maybe an extra 5% long term? And the answer is probably no, because you're probably going to lose some in that 20%.
Well, there is flip sides to that too, though, right? Sometimes that 5% or 2% that you're going to add could be related to better customer service results in the long run, which means you get
but even still, I wouldn't. Yeah, but I wouldn't. A 1 or 2% increase in your customer service is not going to, long term affect your customer retention.
No, what I'm referring to is like some of these systems we put in place can actually have a positive effect on your customer service or customer relations or long-term gains. You can't measure that as easily what those results are going to look like. So sometimes you have to look at what the end game is as well. And if some of these things you're putting in place are to make sure you can get better results for your customers in the future, or you can get better communication with your customers in the future because you've noted there's a poor communication, but somewhere along the line between the team and them, whatever that may look like, you have to make a decision internally whether that's a good choice or not. But you're 100% right. There is sections of your business that are going to cost you money, and they're not going to give you instant results, or they're not going to give you a big enough result to make the change. So choose wisely when you do it. And if you're a customer centric and your business is, relying on the fact that you need to give the best customer service, and you've noted that your customer service is lacking, but putting in a new project management tool, for example, could help improve that sort of relationship with your customers, then you have to go and do the considerations and see if that's a good choice for you. And sometimes the numbers are not going to match initially and show you what to do. You're going to have to make a gut feeling on it.
No, I definitely always say long term, right? You always got to look long term. But to me, as my experience, if I'm looking at and evaluating a project, and in the end, if it's only a 1 or 2% increase, I'm not investing my money.
So tell our listeners how you would work out if, like, on a project, like, because not all projects, like the one I'm feeling here at the moment and I'm throwing out, how would you go about like measuring like your customer satisfactions and stuff like that, if you're going to improve your systems? So I don't know if you can hear, that was a huge clap of thunder that just came.
I was going to say, yeah, we could. I heard that. It sounds like
a storm. The noise canceling isn't quite working as good. That was huge. The whole house shook. Give us an example, like, on some difficult scenarios in your business where I know money and finance, you're the king of that area, and it's a lot easier to try and measure those results. But when it comes to like people, whether it's your internal people or your customers, right, give me some examples on how you can measure some stats or use some numbers to help you with that.
Well, one, if it has to do with your team, right? The biggest thing that you need to do is understand how much time is the team taking right now on a particular task. So let's say, for example, it's taking your team 10 hours a week and they don't have a capacity. And this is, and again, this is like high level, like overview versus, in depth, right? Because there's a lot of different inside approaches, right, that you need to do in order to fully vet a project. But long story short, taking a look at the time that your team is spending, how much will the reduction look like long term? How much is the typical, hour that you're spending? So that's going to give you the hour savings that you're going to receive versus investing. And so let's say, for example, I'm going to see a savings long term year over year of $20,000, right? So I'll be able to increase capacity and save, $20,000, or cut staff, to save $20,000. But the software is going to cost me $19,000. It's not worth it, right? So that's that's like a 5% increase, and ultimately, is it really worth it year over year to spend $19,000 to potentially save $1,000? I make $1,000 on that. No, like, it's not worth it. But if I were to go and I'm going to have a process or a system that, by talking with the team, will help them save 5 hours a week, right? So now I'm at 250 hours a year at times, let's say 10 employees, so $2,500 a year. and I'm paying them $15, $20 an hour, that's a significant cost reduction. Me only $30,000 a year in a software. Now it's worth it. For example, when we implemented new accounting softwares, I talked about it, implemented two.
Yeah.
It was increasing our costs related to our accounting software. I think our costs went, I think we're at maybe let's say, I think 10 grand a year, but it was going to go up to $30,000 a year. So a $20,000 increase in costs. But all of the reporting, right? We were able to go from a 20-day close down to a 5-day close with this. And so we saved all of that time. We were able to do more projects. We were able to push out, more reports out on a timely basis. We were able to get our grants out more. We were able to get increased funding, which are some of those indirect things that you don't get right up front when planning out a project. Yeah. But we were able to determine that we were going to, see an efficiency increase year over year of anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000. So, if not more. Yep. So in that scenario, it's way worth spending the $20,000 increase to get $50,000 or $100,000 back, right? It's a 3 to 5%, So in that case, it's definitely worth it. So that's what I mean when I say, if you're only going to see a small savings or a small bump, it might not be worth it to take that whole investment year over year to get a small investment. And so, yes,
that's good value.
Right. So it may seem like it's a good idea, but, ultimately, you got to spend your time in things that are going to make a massive impact in your business, not these small incremental changes that over time, as you have employees, the change, right? Change is, and change fatigue is a real thing.
Absolutely.
We've been make decisions.
How many businesses have you seen who you go and talk, and even though you've got the best software solution for them, they're not willing to change because the training for their staff outweighs any savings they're going to get. We've witnessed this so many times on multiple software platforms. So just a little call out, by the way. One of my buddies, Daryl Nelson, he lives here in Davao as well. Just put a comment right over their house when that lightning and thunder came through just before. So he heard that as well, right above his house. He's about a couple of kilometers away from here. So almost a mile in your American talk. Nice. So yeah, one of our listeners there. Thanks for listening, Daryl. We appreciate you. Stay
safe. Stay dry.
No, I'm not going outside.
Yeah, good. But yeah, so that's what I mean. And every situation, every project is different. And for example, you really have to decide in your business. So, I had this conversation with another client recently where they're spending about 10 hours doing manual work, and as a CEO of the business. So they're 10 hours a week doing manual work, which, 40, 50 hours a month. And it's work that can be outsourced for vastly a cheaper rate than a CEO working on it, because they're struggling with growth, right? They're struggling with partnerships. And what does the CEO need to be doing? The CEO should be out there building those relationships, having those conversations. This individual is not able to do that because he's doing all of their billing, right? And it takes 10 hours a week. Well, because he's comfortable with it, right? And nobody else is willing to, one, either internally he hasn't taken the time to train anybody, or two, he hasn't been able to outsource it. And
so how long would you,
in the conversation,
based on the conversation you had with this particular CEO, how long would you feel it would take him to train somebody how to do that role?
Well, we had a conversation this week where I was actually in his office, and it would take me a week or two to actually understand it and then be able to train somebody on my team to do it. So maybe not even a week, a day. We could actually take a day and actually understand it, make sure we have the processes in place, the logins in place, and I could have somebody on my side potentially trained up to do it and save him, give him back those 40 hours a week.
So isn't that an interesting scenario? I mean, that one...
Sorry, 40 hours a month. Not
40 hours a month. We're effectively giving him a week back every month.
Yeah.
That's a week back every month.
And I saw the light bulb go out in his head, because when we were having this conversation, we had a great meeting this week. And when we had this conversation, like, how long do you spend doing this? Because he's walking me through it. He's like, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours a week. And I'm like, so you an entire week a month is just doing this. And he's like, wow, yeah, like it is,
Yeah.
and it's like now, like, and I saw the light bulb go off in his head. And this wasn't just, he didn't do a time study, he didn't do any of this. This was just because we were actually having that conversation.
Yeah.
All right, walk me through your processes, walk me through what you do. Wow. Like,
Why
that's
do
a
you do it
manual
this way?
process. Yeah, why do you do it
Oh,
this way? Like,
because we've had these. Like I remember years ago, we had about 5 staff when we first got going around here, and we were doing spreadsheet based payroll,
okay,
and it worked. Okay, we grew out to about 12, 14 staff at one point there, still doing the same style of spreadsheet style payroll, and I had 2 of my team would spend a day each every payroll cutoff. And at that time, we were doing, I think we were doing fortnightly, so, bi-monthly payments.
okay,
And it just became so much drama. So a decision internally was we would switch it
another one.
to monthly payments. So it was the same amount of work that would be put in, and we put monthly payments in instead. Well, fallout was staff hated monthly salaries, and I totally agree, and I can appreciate that. So we went back to bi-monthly, and at the time, we decided to go and invest on a piece of software to handle it. Now, I was skeptical at the time, but that piece of software managed to save us so much time. One person, 2 hours to do the same amount of work.
Right.
One person, 2 hours per cutoff. And we'd get for good measure, we had a second person double check everything for the first 12 months just to make sure everything was right. Sure enough, it was. So
Yeah,
that's
like I said, sometimes
saving right there, right?
And sometimes it's not necessarily a direct savings. It's a savings on the task. And I think this is where you have to determine, like, yes, these tasks are mandatory or they're a priority in the business and they have to get done, but they're taking too much time. And so
also,
I need other things being done. So what it could save you from doing, and this is where the savings comes into play, is that it could essentially save you from actually save you from hiring a new employee. And that's where the actual savings comes in, is that, yes, you may have the same payroll and one person, you go from 2 people on a process to 1, but that person is now freed up to go do other things. And that's where the savings is, because if you kept your process the same and you had 2 people doing that, you would then have to hire a third person to do this other process, where now you could and that's where the savings come in. So
reallocation of duties internally.
Right. So sometimes you got to, like, the savings isn't necessarily going to be a direct savings, but it's going to save you from having to spend additional money. So maybe,
but it can also be direct too, because if you've got, for your example, a CEO.
No, absolutely. I'm just saying,
it could be like a CEO doing something, and how much is a CEO capable of earning in an hour versus someone else in the company capable? Delegating that task to somebody else who, effectively has a lower salary and a lower responsibility in the company is definitely a possibility. 100%. Sometimes taking that time to understand understand who's doing what in your company. Get everyone in your company to go, if you got a larger company or a group of staff, get everyone to do a time analysis like you were talking about. Get an understanding of what everybody in the team is doing. Because what you might find is there might be more efficient techniques you can teach, which frees them up an hour a month or an hour a week.
Well, that's one.
Do something else.
That's definitely a thing. I mean, when I've come into new jobs, it's one of the first things that I do with the team is I kind of have them do that, right? I understand, so that I can understand, like, what they're doing on a regular basis, and does it align with their job description, which I feel like a lot of times there's, just like in business owners and service people, there's scope creep. There's scope creep in job descriptions and employees as well. Like, they start picking up things that they shouldn't be doing, and nobody knows. And now you're 6 months down the road, and their main task is falling behind because they don't have the time, because they picked up this other thing that they don't need to be doing.
So it's like the old case of, do you have an IT guy? Oh, I know a little bit about IT. I've changed I've installed a printer at home. All right, you're the new IT guy. Now suddenly everybody in the company goes to this one person but their job is actually something completely different. But they're finding themselves swamped with IT work because everyone just assumes that they're the go-to IT person.
Yeah, and
this is
IT is one I think like a lot of people this could be a whole other podcast, but people don't put enough worry on IT concerns within their businesses.
Right,
and because like now once you start, like you're looking for like big insurance, cybersecurity is a big thing. At least in the US, I'm sure it's over there, but the insurance policies like are now separate. So if you just have a general liability insurance, it's more likely not going to cover a cybersecurity attack. And if you don't have the systems in place, like an actual, MSP provider to help you with the systems, to help you with the security, right? You're more likely going to be at risk, and you're going to have to come out of pocket, and it may cost you your business. I have recently, I've talked to multiple $1 million businesses that do not have IT people in place, and the one has like 50, 60 employees. And it's shocking to me. Like, you're saying by not making this a priority that you are willing to risk your entire business, because if you have a security breach with HIPAA violation, which is what this would be, you have so much, you're on the hook for so much, right? Because it's not just, I got to notify people. Oh, sorry, we had a security breach. No. You have to notify people. You have to notify all your past people. You have to go and you have to pay for some sort of remedy to all these people because of the issues, right? That's why you see, like, if your data was ever part of a security breach, you get like 6 months or a year of this service, but it's getting paid for by the company that had the security breach. Yep. So if it happens for you, and let alone like ransoms, if people hold all your stuff ransom, like, you have a big issue. And so when people are successful and they put security or the IT on the back end, like, that's another thing that, like, is just shocking to me.
Well, it's getting a lot more. Like Australia, where I've got a lot of friends and clients who are MSP providers, and these guys are going through their ISO compliances. They're making sure that their client sites are ISO compliant, because you can't get the insurances needed for business now without it. Reputational damage is massive. Like in the US, you've got your NIST and a few other different variations on security protocols right now for compliance reasons. If you look at like a lot of businesses that deal with anything government related, you have to have those compliance in place. So if you don't have those compliances in place, you'll probably find you're in breach of contract, which means you're opening yourself up to a whole nother level of liability. And this is very, very common that people don't take the time to understand when they're applying for these jobs, like even HIPAA compliance. If you're using a CRM and to keep all your customer records, but it's not a HIPAA compliant CRM, then you can be in a lot of drama. You can be a lot of trouble there. You need to make sure that whoever you're partnering with is compliant, does have the right compliance that you need. And when shit hits the fan, you need to be able to call someone. I would have been 2009, 2006, no, 2008, 2007, 2008 era. I was working for an MSP back in Sydney, back in Australia. And we had a client, and it was a large international client. And like back then, we were doing video conferencing all around the world, which was pretty crazy. We were using Polycom systems. It was very expensive. It wasn't like you just jump on a webcam and do a call like we're doing right now. It was a lot to it. And one of the things that we found back then was we were running RSA two-factor authentication devices in order to do logins with the platforms and putting extra security levels on top of Windows, because we had company laptops going out that would run over VPN private networks using hardware devices to get security back to the mainframe computers in order to be able to access customer data. And guess what happens when somebody actually makes a phone call and says, "Oh, I lost my computer. It was stolen." You have to go and basically fix that problem as an IT person. If you don't have an IT person, think of the implications that comes here. all that data sitting on that machine is now vulnerable. And to make matters even worse now, everything is online and in the cloud and all that wonderful stuff. If you're not running a simple thing like two-factor authentication, where you actually have to put in your username and password is just not efficient anymore. You need a secondary source like an authenticator app or something running on a third-party device. Send an SMS message to another device to, get that security in place. And if you're not running that sort of thing, then you're going to have all sorts of problems. You can't explain that away. And I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Australia, if you get a breach, you have to announce it publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Failure to announce it publicly means you are liable to some very, very large fines.
Yeah, I think it's the same way here now. Granted, I'm not an IT MSP, but I believe it's the same way. I attended like a seminar about it, if I remember correctly from that seminar. Like there's like 3 levels or 3 steps you have to take, and all of them could be costly. I mean, you could, depending on how much data you have, the example they use, it could cost you $250,000, right? Which for a lot of small business owners, like that's going to put you out of business.
100%. Not to mention, imagine the reputation. So you might have the $250,000 to fix the problem, but what does that reputation damage do long term for your existing clientele or new clientele coming on? You can't get around that. That's going to be damaging. That's really, really tough. It's not happening just to the Sonys and the Microsofts and all these big companies anymore. It's happening to small companies. The amount of ransomware attacks that I've heard of with small businesses who have paid the ransom to get their data back is phenomenal. Yeah.
Because what they get in there, right? And they take a look at your financials, they take a look at your bank accounts because they have access to all it, because it's probably all part of your data. And then they determine a number that they feel like you're willing to pay to get your stuff back, and then they send it to you. That's their job. Yeah. That's their job, is to steal information, lock it up, and then ask you for money back. And then
absolutely. And one of the biggest things, like when I talk to my MSP clients, one of the biggest reasons that people get hacked these days is they haven't had all their team members educated on cybersecurity.
Oh my God. I don't know how many times people click on, things that you and I might like.
Well, that's
like, oh my God. I had a story of a CFO prior to me, and I got told this by the CEO, who actually clicked on the link that said, "Hey, this is the CEO, right? Use the name. I need you to go get me $5,000 worth of gift cards."
What?
After the CEO, yeah. The CFO went and actually did it, even though their office is 3 doors down.
Knock. What's these gift cards for?
Yeah, wait a minute. If it seems like it probably sus, it probably is. And we get them in our email all the time. You get the prints or whatever, but they're getting better, right? They're not stupid anymore. But
in Australia, there was a really good one.
But the number one thing that they can't do, right? The thing they can't do is they can't fix the email address that they send from. So the easiest way to find out if it's a spam or anything like that is you open up the email in the name. The name may look legit, but actually click on it and open and look at the email behind it. And It's probably going to be some random letters. It's not going to be on your domain. Boom, spam. And that's, I think, is a test thing that I think a lot of people have put out, is you can actually send out tests, phishing emails. And then when people click on it, take them to a website to say, hey, this is a test, you would have failed,
Well, the MSPs back in Australia that I work with actually have certification processes for staff, which is part of the new requirement for them to get ISO certified. So what they do is they actually send out certification testing, which they have to go through and do a course to learn how to actually be more system aware of that sort of thing. There was a scenario where I was shared to me a couple of months ago where there was an ATO email sent out to an accounting firm. Now, these guys were so good who set this up. It looked really official. Ironically, when he's telling me about this, my friend, I'd actually received a similar email only a few days before, and I'd looked into the header and saw it was coming from a Zoho address, which is a legitimate CRM. So, I mean, that could be something that seems legitimate, right? So I'm looking and going, well, no, this is not right. Close, get rid of it. they had set up a similar URL to the ATO in Australia.
Yep.
And they'd actually been driving traffic, and they'd mimicked the website to make it look and feel the same. And what they had asked for is, when you go through, you have to put in, 5 pieces of information to verify your account, which is something ATO would never do. It's your IRS, basically, in the US. It's the Australian taxation office. And they had the person who was on this team, who was quite a smart reception person, who'd been there for a long, long time, thought it was legitimate, and filled it out with the information they thought in an accounting firm. And they were like, oops, I don't think this is real at the end of it. And that's when they got their MSP involved. But they weren't alone. We're not talking about people going out and targeting, grandma, grandpa, getting on the phone, trying to convince them to remote them into their computers so they can steal from them directly anymore. These guys are a lot more sophisticated and a lot smarter. And it only takes the least computer savvy person on your team to do the wrong thing to compromise your entire business. Think about that for a moment. Who is the least computer savvy person who uses business data in your organizational business? That's the person who could potentially destroy your entire business just because that you haven't had them educated on cybersecurity.
You should be having yearly trainings, yearly reminders. Like, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people don't always need to be educated. They just need to be reminded a lot of times. Like, they probably heard it before. They just gotta get reminded. Exactly. So
make them aware. If they're aware, look, they're gonna be a little bit more aware. And it comes down to that thing, like, if they're aware, they're gonna ask questions.
Right.
People who ask questions, I would much rather someone come to me and say, hey, so this doesn't look really good. What do you think? Yeah, look, that looks sus. We get leads all the time coming through for, new business opportunities. And I always get people on my team look at it and go, is this a real opportunity? Nah, it's spam. They're like, how do you know? It's like, because of this or this or this. And I educate them at the time rather than say, it's spam and then delete it. I show them why I feel it's spam. And intriguingly enough, a lot of businesses don't use those scenarios. My clients back in Australia, the MSPs, you know what they allow their clients to do? If they get an email they're not sure about, they encourage them to call their support line, call their IT help desk and say, hey, I've got an email. Can you just take a look at it? Sure. Let me remote into your computer to take a quick look. Right. Oh, yeah, that's a worry. Don't open that one. Oh, no, that one's okay. Here's how you tell. And they will do a verification and and check it for them right then and there. You need to find yourself partners like that. Spend the time, the money, because you might spend $100 a month per employee on a full maintenance agreement with an MSP, for example.
Right.
But that's still a hell of a lot cheaper than that $250,000 you're probably going to spend if there's a breach.
For sure. And it's always worth, like, it's an investment. It's just, an insurance policy. But I know we talked a lot in terms of, we talked delegation, right? We talked, the power of kind of being better at, explaining, different things that you need to do, how to evaluate savings, of a potential, improvement or strategy or efficiency. And then we talked cybersecurity, which is, interesting today. But so with that, Duarne, what's one thing, we always close this out. What's one thing that you hope they take away from, if you made it this far, we love you. Thank you, by the way. But what the listener that's here right now, what do you hope that they take away from today?
For people, I think if you're listening or you've watched today, one small change in your business can make a big difference.
Yep.
Not making a change in your business can also make a big difference. Sometimes not a good one. So evaluate change and evaluate not making change and make a decision based on the data you have. And if you're not sure, find someone you trust to talk to about it and, build yourself a network or a community of people who can give you the advice or assistance or feedback to at least point you in the right direction.
Correct. Yeah, I would say, like, the one thing that I would advise anybody, if you haven't done it recently is the time study. Like find out where you're actually investing your time, which is your biggest asset that you have. You may not have money, right? You may not have a lot of resources, but what you do have is the same resource that you, me, Duarne, Elon Musk, the president of the United States, right? We all have the same thing, and that is time. So evaluate where you're investing your most valuable time, asset. Find out where it's going, and then you can make adjustments on that, where you need to make improvements throughout the week. So, but as always, go ahead. I know you're going to say something else.
Yeah, I mean, if you were telling someone to make make that log, what would you recommend? They do it in a spreadsheet. They do it on a notepad. They do it in a Google sheet. How would you do it? How do you recommend people do that so it's easy for them?
It really comes down to whatever's comfortable, right? So you could just do it in notes, like just have a yellow notepad next to you. Hey, I woke up at 7:30 to 8 today. Had breakfast, got ready for the day. 8 a.m. logged in. And then 8 to 9 was checking emails and responding to clients. 9 to 10, I was doing client work and just write it out. Or you can go on your notepad on your phone. You can put it into a spreadsheet. Kind of make it like a calendar, and kind of make the time slots on the left hand side, and then the tasks across the top, or put the dates across the top with a day, and then the task on the left side. Whatever you want to do, but there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think the ultimate way is just do it. Just get started with it. I think is the best. There's no perfect setup for it. If you're comfortable writing things out, write it out. If you're comfortable, typing into your phone, type it on your phone. I think ultimately it comes down to just going in and doing it. And I'm sure, there's also some automated tools like, I mentioned it before, Clockify. You can go and set up a free account on Clockify and start your time, put all your timings in there, and it'll give you a report, automated, right? So it just depends on what your comfortability level is. But my number one advice for this is just do it, right? Nike, right? Just do it. Just get out there and do it. So, all right. Well, if you made it this far, we love you. We hope you got something out of, something of value. And I know you got something of value out of it today. But, if you have any comments or questions, drop them down below. We'll make sure to answer those in a future episode, or, drop it. We'll give our answers in the comments as well. And if you'd like, help us get the word out. Duarne and I are starting this podcast out. This is episode 9. We're about to get into double digits here soon. But, share it with your network. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, or, depending on where you're watching us, or share it on your page and help us get the word out. And we love you all. We look forward to, kind of continuing to help you. As always, we look forward to, maybe we'll even see you in the mastermind. But Duarne, good seeing you, buddy. And if there's and I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. And everybody, if you're watching this, we love you. Keep pushing forward, kind of keep making those strides every single day. Small changes every day compound into large changes in the long term. So until the next one, I'll see you next week. And Duarne, have a good one.
Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Dave.
Yeah, everybody. Bye-bye.